Let us now start our discussion for the module 2. Right, so can you guys see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I have already uploaded this one on our canvas. So please download this one so that you can have your own copy. All right. So once you're done in downloading this one, okay, so we may now start. So if you have a question or clarification regarding with a particular page or slide, so please let me know so that we can go back and discuss that one again. All right, so as you guys can see, we have here flowchart. Okay, so I know that most of you already know what is a flowchart is. Okay, but in here we're going to talk about more. Okay, like maybe the parts of flowcharts that you guys don't know yet. All right, so what is a flowchart? So from the word itself, it is a flow of data. Okay, means it is a visualization of a process of a certain system. Okay, so as simple as it is, flow of data. So we have only two implementation of data. So it's from left to right and then from top to bottom. Other than that, it's not considered as flowchart anymore. Okay, you cannot have from bottom to top. Well, unless you have a loop on that process. But mostly we have a flowchart wherein it's flowing from top to bottom and then from left to right. Right. So here's another definition of a flowchart. So it is a diagrammatic representation that illustrates the sequence. Okay. So this one is quite similar with your black diagram wherein you really need to uh, put the logical sequence of what will happen on that system. And in here in flowchart, okay, that kind of feature must really be followed. Okay, it's strictly that you need to put the correct sequence. Okay, because incorrect sequence, will make your flow of data incorrect already. Okay, so you must have a correct sequence or correct uh, process or representation on every data. Okay, so another question when it comes to flowchart is when to make a flowchart. Okay, so is it at early stages? Is it if you already have the draft from the paper? Is it once you already have the idea from your mind? Well, the only thing that you need to think about when it comes to flowchart is as long as you have the idea how to create it, then you can create it anytime. Okay, even though you're in the middle of the project, even though you're at the end of your project, even though you're only at the early stage, like you don't have any idea how to start a certain project, you can start anywhere. Okay, but the most ideal one is of course in early stages. Why? Because a flowchart is a way for you to be able to see what part, okay, of the system uh, will go on a, like for example, we have this section, another section, and then another section. So in that case, you can already identify which part you're going to focus for now. So for now, we'll focus on the data, we'll focus on the inputs, and then the next day we'll focus on the processes, and then the next day we'll focus on the outputs. Okay, and then from there you can combine those three and then check whether they are really going along with each other. Okay, well, you can also do that once you're done with your system. Like for example, you want to have a step-by-step process on how your system works, you can also do that one. Okay, and then another thing why we have flowcharts, since as you guys may all know, flowchart is like a layman's diagram. Okay, like just by looking at it, even though it's or I'm not a techie person, or I don't have an in-depth knowledge of that system, I will be able to know just by looking at the flowchart. Okay, so that is why they call this one the facilitate communication from from the programmers and to the business people. Okay, so this is how we sell our product. Okay, with the use of a flowchart. Like for example, this is how the system works. We don't explain the system by explaining the codes step by step, we explain the system by using a flowchart. So I would say that that is the easiest way for you guys to sell your product by the use of a flowchart. Okay, so in that way, the let's say the business owner will be able to understand what you're trying to create. Okay, like step by step on what will happen at this stage, at this point, and so on and so forth. All right. So yeah. So any questions so far up to this point?
None, sir.
All right then. So again, if you guys have a question, so feel free to ask me anytime. All right. So here's the role of a flowchart. Well, flowcharts play a vital role in the programming of a problem and are quite helpful in understanding the logic of complicated and lengthy problems. Well, for some reasons, this one is like a little bit, okay, a little bit contradicting the concept of a flowchart. Because when we say flowchart, it is actually the bird's eye view, right? So meaning, it is okay if we have, a concise, a short, a small system. Yeah, you can use a flowchart. But if you have a super complicated program, maybe using a flowchart is not that ideal anymore. Okay. Well, in some cases, yes, it's still ideal. But when it comes to super big project, maybe black diagram will do the role instead of the flowchart, because the flowchart will do the step-by-step process. Okay, and you don't want to have 5 pages of flowchart. You don't want to have a super big flowchart. You don't want to confuse your customer or your or the other user that who's going to use your system. Okay, so if we have a super big project, black diagram will be one of the best. Okay, so in black diagram, you don't really need to have the flow of the data. All you need to do is have two actors, and then what are the things that he can do, and then what are the other actor can do or can react. Okay, so in here, if we have a small or let's say medium project, so it's still okay. Okay, especially if you want to identify a problem, okay, on your system. Like for example, you've received this error. Okay, so in that case, you will be able to, pinpoint step by step. So at this point, still okay. At this another point, still okay. But at this point, we've just received this error on these certain years. In that case, you will be able to identify that this part or this function is the one that is having an error. Okay, and yeah, so actually, I'm not really sure if I will put this one, because in a lot of articles that I have read according with flowcharts, they said that this one is the best if we have complicated uh, system, and the other says that flowchart is only the best if we have a small to medium project or system. Since yeah, just like what I mentioned a while ago, you don't want to have a 3 pages or 5 pages of flowcharts. That will make you know the system quite complicated to understand. So hence, it is correct to say that a flowchart is a must, okay, for the better documentation of a complex program. Okay, so either of those two, even though you have a small or big project, so you could say that it's still a win-win. Okay, so that is why I've still included it in here. But at least you guys know what is the reason behind why did I put this one. Okay, it's still a win-win, even though you have 5 pages of flowcharts. Yeah, flowcharts, but it's not ideal anymore. But yeah, it's still a win-win because you have a better documentation. Okay, especially if you are the one who's going to create the project, and then you also the one who's going to read that flowchart. Okay, because mostly when we are creating a flowchart, it is for the customer, not for us. Okay, so yeah, just for a better documentation. All right, so just to give you guys a short, I mean, yeah, brief image about flowchart. So of course we have this start and then end, but in some cases, okay, we have start but we don't have an end. Well, that's okay. Okay, but in most cases or in all cases, okay, we must have a start, okay, and can have many, let's say, ending point. Okay, so you can have as many ending point, but one start only. Okay, and it is necessary that you must have a starting point. Okay, so you can have a, yeah, you must have a starting point, and then it's okay not to have an ending point, right? And it's also okay if you have a lot of ending points, okay, but one starting point on. All right, so as you guys can see right here, this is a simple flowchart wherein it's a system of alarm. So if the alarm rings, we have right here the decision. So are you ready to get up? So this is a question wherein, of course, you have two options, so yes or no. So if you chose yes, so of course you're going to climb out of the bed and then that's it. So that's the function of your alarm, okay, or the main role of your alarm, so to wake you up. However, if you're not ready to get up yet, so you'll go here and then you'll go back to the, say, from the start. But of course, you have to wait like 5 minutes, like hit the snooze button, and then there's a relay for 5 minutes, and then it will alarm again until you know you will climb out of bed. Okay, so you will just loop here if you just keep on going back to your bed. So you must climb up out of bed for you to end this system. Okay, so it says your average 3 times. Okay, so in some cases or in some phones, once you once you reach the 3 times of hitting the snooze button, it will stop. Okay, it will let you sleep already. Okay, but in some cases, you can set that one actually on your phone wherein you can have an infinite loop, okay, not just 3 times. All right. So as you guys can see, we have a start and then an end, and then the square one are the process. Okay. So this one is kind of similar with our black diagram. So this is an action or an action or a process. And then for the triangle, this one is a decision. 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 This one decision object, right? And then a process, and then a relay. So this is at exact image of relay or delay. Okay. Then other process here, and then circle for the terminator, and then start. Okay. And here are the others guidelines or other shapes when it comes to flowcharts. So there's actually a lot. So let's start with the basics. Of course, we always have a terminator. So this is an indicator that this is the beginning or the end of your program or your diagram. Okay, and then the next one here is the process or the action on what will happen on your let's say system. And then we have here the triangle, not triangle, diamond. Okay, you have here the diamond wherein it's the decision. Okay, so in decision point, there must be only one input, and then you can have three outputs in here, 1, 2, and 3, but one input only. All right, so that's the limitation of the decision. And then we have here the delay or relay. It's like what we have in our alarm clock system. So yeah, very straightforward. Delay indicates a delay in the process. Like you have to wait for that depends on the system. So in here, we've set it for 5 minutes. So if you've set it on the side, wherein let's say 10 minutes or 1 hour or 1 day, then that's the delay of your system. And then we have here the data. Okay, so it can represent any type of data in a flowchart. So anything as long as it's a data. So this is the shape of a data. And then we have here a document. So this is very important if you have a process wherein you're going to have a documentation. Okay. So yeah, it's like a shape of a document, like a folder, I guess. And we have here multiple documents. Let's say your system is not only limited by one document. Let's say 2 people or 3 people or 3 inputs uh, will receive or will create a certain document. then you must put here multiple documents. So in document, it's not actually limited by its size, but if we have one process and then it's saying that, document below, then meaning it is only coming from one person or one process, okay, or one input only or one data. But if we have multiple documents, meaning it is coming from a lot of processes or a lot of inputs. Okay, so that is why we have here multiple documents. Okay, so it's not because of its size. Okay, so you can have up to infinite size with the document, the same with multiple documents. And then we have here the subroutine, preparation, display, manual input, manual loop, loop limit, store data, etc., etc. So we will not discuss all of those since most of them you will only use 4 shapes or 5 shapes. Okay, so in some cases maybe you will be needing this one. Okay, like up page connector, meaning there is a continuation from this page to this page. So that's what I'm talking about a while ago. You don't want to have uh, let's say 3 page of flowchart. Okay. So well, if ever you have 3 pages of flowcharts, then you can use this one. So as you guys can see, we have here like an arrow. So meaning the next page is down below, or the next page is, well, this is unusual. The up page connector is at the top, which is will not really happen, I guess. And we also have here up page connector, wherein the next page is on the left side, and this one is on the right side, and maybe this one is possible. Okay, this one is possible if we have, let's say, another coupon band at the top. But then again, you don't want to have a flow of diagram wherein you've started from top to bottom and then will suddenly go up. Okay, so it must be always from top to bottom and then from left to right. So just those two kind of implementations only. All right, so that is why this one is quite impossible to implement, but still possible. But kind of confusing already. And then we have here the OR, okay, and then we have summing junction. So those two are okay with input datas, okay, especially if we have numbers. Okay, so you might be going to use this one or logical end. Well, they are also okay with, let's say, situationals, but in most cases they are used for integers or numbers, right? And then we have here collate, sort, merge, etc., etc. Okay. And then the last two, we have here database, wherein you will mostly use this one if you're going to use your flowchart with database, of course. Say your program is using a database, PHP, Firebase, or any database that you're going to store your data. Right. So yeah, those are the shapes that you can use in creating a flowchart. But of course, you're not going to use all of those. Okay, here are the only things that maybe you're going to use. So here are the most common flowchart symbols. So as you guys can see, we have here the terminator. Okay, so this is what indicates the start and end decision. So yes or no, process, the action, documentation. You have multiple documentation, data storage, internal storage, tape data, database, input or output, your display. So this is like a comment only, okay, where it will display this. That depends on your program. Let's, for example, it will display this text. It will display this value, etc., etc. And then manual operation, like for example, once the automatic loops is already done. Let's say if a person is needed on that system, so you can include this one, manual operation, meaning a human will interact with your system. Okay, so maybe they need to input a certain number or a certain value or a certain command, etc., etc. Then merge, manual input. Okay, so manual operation is mostly uh, combined with manual input. Okay, so if you have manual operation, you also have manual input. And then we have here the connector. So the difference with the connector from the off-page connector is the connector is still inside the page. Okay, but for the off-page connector, so your flow chart is now divided into two page. Okay, but if it's still in one page, meaning say this part is still connected on this part, then you can use the connector. So later on, we're going to have an example on how to use a connector or an off-page connector. All right, so actually shapes are not necessary since it's a flowchart. You know, you have implemented your system logically or in the correct sequence. So maybe, okay, maybe the let's say the common people who's not really into flowcharts, like they don't really have an idea how to read a flowchart. So yeah, it's okay. They will still be able to understand it. Okay, since like when it comes to flow, you're just following the arrow. Okay, after this one, it will go here or it will go here. Okay, so sometimes even though your shape is like a process or even a tape data or even a database, so as long as they can see an arrow, then they have an idea where will that data will go. Okay, at some point. So yeah, it is not strictly necessary to use boxes, circles, diamonds, or other such symbols to construct a flowchart. But these do help to describe the types of events in the chart more clearly. So especially if you have legends at the bottom right or bottom left. So yeah, even though that person doesn't have the ability to read the flowchart, so it's okay to include shapes. Okay, so what are those shapes for? So maybe he will look for a legend or labels that this one indicates process, this one indicates a decision, etc., etc. Right? So here are some guidelines, okay, in drawing a proper flowchart. So all necessary requirements should be listed out in logical orders. Just like what I mentioned a while ago, you should list it in strictly logical order. Because if it's not in logical order, then you're only confusing your user or your customer, okay, or the one who's going to use your system. Okay, so it must be in logical order. Next, it must be clear, neat, and easy to follow. Okay, so this is actually the main idea why we're creating a flowchart. Okay, so it must be easy to follow because if it's not easy to follow, then what's the point of creating a flowchart? Especially that the one who's going to read your flowchart are the non-techie people. Okay, the one who wants to learn about your system. Okay, the one who's going to use your system, your customer. Okay, so there should not be any room for ambiguity in understanding the flowchart. Okay, so make it as simple as possible and as neat as possible, as concise as possible. Yeah, and everything. So in other words, it should be perfect, right? So in block diagram, yeah, you can have, let's say, uh, 50-50, like 50%, some people will understand it, and then 50%, some people will not understand it. But for the flowchart, 100%, everybody should be able to understand or follow your flowchart, okay, without uh, focusing too much on the specifications, okay, so by following the arrows. Next one here is the usual direction of the flowchart or the flow of procedure or system is from left to right or top to bottom. So just like what I mentioned a while ago, it must be from left to right only or top to bottom. Okay. So in that case, it's easier for the user or customer to read your flowchart. And here are some limitations. So only one flow line should come out from a process symbol. All right. So you don't want to have two lines or three lines coming out from your process. Okay, especially if uh, it's not necessary. Like yeah, you can have two lines as long as it's understandable. Like if this is the case, uh, if if it's an if cases, like in programming we have if, right, and then else, and then else if. Yeah, you can have those as long as you have full explain it on that certain process. Then again, uh, you don't want to have a long explanation. So if possible, just 2 words, 3 words, or 4 words only. Okay. So mostly we use one flow of line only, or maximum of two actually. Okay. So three are quite hard to implement already, since you're going to, you know, have a longer discussion or longer sentence on that one process. Okay. That is why it says here only one flow line should come out from a process symbol. So another limitation here is one flow line should enter a decision symbol. So just like what I mentioned a while ago in your diamond, okay, so you can have three outputs, okay, three flow lines going out, but there must be only one going in, okay, or entering on your decision symbol. Okay. And write within the standard flowchart symbols briefly. Okay, so this is also very important. Okay, very important rules when it comes to creating a flowchart. So just a brief uh, word or brief sentence. Possible 2 words, 3 words. Possible make it 1 word only, or 1 letter or 2 letters only. Okay, so as necessary, we can use the annotation symbol to describe data or computational steps more clearly. Like, for example, instead of using the word plus, you can use the annotation symbol cross or plus. Okay, so if there is an annotated symbol for that word, please use that one. Okay, so in that case, it will make the characters, the words, or the or anything that you're going to put inside of that uh, shape much better to understand. Okay, so it's easier to understand. Like greater than, less than, equal to, what else? Like for example, in yes, no, just use Y and then N for no. Okay, so in that case, it's much more preferred. All right, so can you guys still follow up to this point?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. So no questions so far?
Sir, how do you use the tape data symbol?
This one? Well,
Yes.
actually, I've never used this one. Me myself is also wondering where to use this one.
Yes, sir.
But maybe, okay, since this one is under, as you guys can see, this one is under storage. So we have the green one for storage. We have the orange one for documentation. And then here are the functionalities where you can sort, you can merge, manual input, etc. So maybe this one is for storage. Okay, it's just that
Mm,
I'm not sure what is the functionality of this one for now. Okay,
mm. Okay, thank you, sir.
basta sa ngayon for storage siya. Okay, yun yung category niya. Alright? So if ever you're going to use this one in the future, but I doubt that you might going to use this one. Well, yun. So search na lang sa smart.io or even in Smart Draw for Lucid Chart. So I guess you have an explanation regarding this one. Right, so let's see kung meron siya dito. Wala. Actually, bago ko nga lang nakita. So ito na yung parang pinaka. Okay, so this is the one that we are mostly using. But in here, this is my first time seeing this one. All right, so where are we now? So guideline number 7. So if the flowchart becomes complex, so it is better to use connector symbols to reduce the number of flow lines. So it is where now the off-page connector or the connector itself uh, must fulfill its role. Okay. So you don't want to have you don't want to have a spaghetti connection. You don't want to have a lot of lines intersecting with each other. So if that's the case, then you must use a connector symbol. All right. So here's one example when it comes to using a connector symbol. So never mind the process. So what important is, like for example, you want to continue that one on the right side. Okay, this point. So you can connect this one, okay, into a certain connector. Okay, so just a circle one, and continue it right here. Okay, so meaning this pass right here or this decision symbol is connected with this process. Okay, so instead of drawing a very long line going up and then connect it right here, so why not use a connector? Okay, so in that way it's easier to understand and then it's more neat. Okay, it's much more cleaner if you're going to use a physical line. All right, so yeah, so we will stop right here for now, and then we will just continue the rest on the part 2, since we don't have enough time again anymore. Okay, so see you guys on part 2. So just wait for the second link, right?
Thank you, sir.
Sir, sir.
All right, so goodbye for now.